Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. This is the next in a series of live streams where we are looking at some of the big mysteries in the world of Ice and Fire. And today we are going to be looking at Azor Ahai and also crossing over into The Prince That Was Promised. So as we'll get onto in a moment, the two kind of conflate, certainly in most of our minds and also in the minds of some of the more learned people in the actual world itself of Ice and Fire. So I will start out with a little bit of an overview, then we will get to some questions, both from my patrons and whatever we have coming up in the chat. So why don't we start by just doing a quick overview of what the Azor Ahai myth is, because this is a myth, it is a legend that comes from the time of the first long night. And we get a couple of mentions of Azor Ahai in the world of Ice and Fire. I'll just quickly read out the headlines of that. We're told, how long the darkness endured, this is the first long night, how long the darkness endured, no man can say. But all agree that it was only when a great warrior, known variously as Herkun the Hero, Azor Ahai, Yintar, Nefarion, Eldric Shadowchaser, arose to give courage to the race of men and lead the virtuous into battle with his blazing sword Lightbringer, that the darkness was put to rout, and light and love returned once more to the world. Then we get another slightly different account elsewhere that says it is also written that there are annals in Ashai of such a darkness, the long night, and of a hero who fought against it with a red sword. His deeds are said to have been performed before the rise of Valyria, in the earliest age when Old Geese was first forming its empire. This legend has spread west from Ashai, and the followers of R'hllor claim that this hero was named Azor Ahai and prophesy his return. So that's the starting point we have for this. This is a legend. It is associated with the first long night. This was a hero who appeared just when things were starting to look like hope was gone. He appeared, he rallied humanity. He had a sword, the red sword, the fiery sword called Lightbringer, and that brought an end to the long night. And we also get linked in with that this fact that Azor Ahai, which is the name that we are thinking about, we remember now, is just one of several names we've got going on here. We've also got Herkun the Hero, Nefarion, Yintar, etc. And you could probably throw into that mix the last hero, who is the equivalent in Westeros. So we've got all of these names. This one, Azor Ahai, is the one that is associated with the faith of R'hllor. That's the one that they have held on to. And that comes from the earliest annals in Ashai. So there's a really long history. This isn't just like a modern story that has been made up. This does seem to have come back from a long time ago. Now, we have to give our health warning here, our George R. R. Martin health warning about legends, the Age of Heroes, and things like that. Every time this comes up, he says, treat the legends in his world as we would treat legends in our world. Don't think that every detail of the story is right. There's probably some truth in there somewhere. There is an inherited memory, but this has gone through so many generations of people passing this story on from one to another, exaggerating a few bits here, forgetting some details there. Things shift and change. Yes, there is truth in there, but don't take it as a literal story of exactly what happened. So that should be, whenever we're looking back at the legends here, that should be our guiding light all the way through this. Now, we then I can sort of like go to ask, what then is this myth of Azor Ahai? What if we have got this character called Azor Ahai? What did he do? What was so special? What made him stand out against everyone else? Well, the truth of the matter is we don't have much. Now, what we do have, there's Maester Aemon leaves a book when he heads off south. He leaves a book called The Jade Compendium for Jon. sort of picking out a bit that he thinks he should read, and we sort of second-hand get a little bit of information from that. This is John speaking. He says, I looked at that book Maester Aemon left me, the Jade Compendium, the pages that told of Azor Ahai. The pages that told of Azor Ahai. Lightbringer was his sword, tempered with his wife's blood, if Votar can be believed. Thereafter, Lightbringer was never cold to the touch, but warm as Nisa Nisa had been warm. In battle, the blade turned fiery hot. Once Azor Ahai fought a monster. When he thrust the sword through the belly of the beast, its blood began to boil. Smoke and steam poured from its mouth. Its eyes melted and dribbled down its cheeks, and its body burst into flame. So that's the closest we've got to what is Azor Ahai like in action. But the longest story, and we get told this from a couple of different people actually, but the longest and most detailed story we have about Azor Ahai is about the forging of his sword Lightbringer that we've just been reading about here. And in that story, at a very kind of high level, what happens is he decides he needs to have a sword that can help him fight the forces of darkness. So he spends a long time forging this sword. He's in a temple when he does this, and he forges a sword and he plunges it into water to temper it, which is what you do at the end of the process, and it shattered, it broke. So he spent even longer next time making this sword, and this time he went out, he tried to temper it by killing a lion, stabbing a lion in the heart, and that again didn't work. The third time he spends even longer making this sword, and the way, well, we'll read this one here because it's great was his woe, and great was his sorrow then, for he knew what he must do. 100 days and 100 nights he laboured on the third blade, and as it glowed white-hot in the sacred fires, he summoned his wife. Nisa, Nisa, he said to her, for that was her name, bear your breast, and know that I love you best of all that is in this world. She did this thing, why I cannot say, and Azor Ahai thrust the smoking sword through her living heart. It is said that her cry of anguish and ecstasy left a crack across the face of the moon, but her blood and her soul and her strength and her courage all went into the steel. Such is the tale of the forging of Lightbringer, the red sword of heroes. So already we've got this clear idea of this legendary figure whose main thing is, yes, he wins the battle against the darkness, pushes that back, but it's his main distinguishing characteristic is this sword called Lightbringer, which is hot and fiery red. So that's what we have really about this original Azor Ahai. But we did get this reference a little bit earlier where the religion of R'hllor believes that Azor Ahai will come again, will come back. Now, the words used slightly change here, so don't get caught up too much. I don't think the implication is that this is a kind of like a reincarnation in the kind of the way that if you're thinking of kind of, if you've been watching The Wheel of Time, Randall Thor there is a reincarnation of previous dragons and things like that. That's not that kind of idea, but we have the new Azor Ahai, come again, born again, is a word, is a phrase that's used a couple of times. And so they're looking out for him. And we get the person who is looking out for him most noticeably through the story that we have so far is Melisandre, who comes for various reasons, we'll come on to in a moment, she comes to the conclusion that it is Stannis. And she heads up to the wall with him, and then she has to kind of try and convince everybody in the Night's Watch that this is Azor Ahai, which takes a little bit of work because obviously most of them don't really know who this Azor Ahai person is anyway. There is one, however, very learned person there who is Maester Aemon, and we do get this wonderful sort of conversation where, let's see if I can find that. I'm not sure if I've got that. Oh yes, here we go. So we get this conversation between the two of them where she's there asserting that Stannis is there. He's um, the hero. The end times have come. It's quite apocalyptic. The religion of the law when you start digging into it. And then Maester Aemon says this. He says, "All of them seem surprised to hear Maester Aemon murmur, 'It is the war for the dawn you speak of, my lady. But where is the prince that was promised?' 'He stands before you,' Melisandre declared, 'though you do not have the eyes to see. Stannis Baratheon is Azor Ahai come again, the warrior of fire.'" Now, the interesting thing about that is that Maester Aemon sort of says, he hears what she's talking about, and she's been very much, this is about Azor Ahai, and he says, where's the prince that was promised? And she responds and saying, "It's Stannis. He's Azor Ahai." And the two of them really from that moment interchangeably use the phrases Azor Ahai and the prince that was promised. Now, we don't have access to the exact records that either of them have been reading, the books, whatever it is. So I think we just have to accept these two people who have read a lot, and they don't have any problem with this idea that this is the same character. The legends that they've got might be slightly different. The prophecies they've got might be slightly different. But as we'll see, we'll come to the signs of Azor Ahai reborn, which is what we're now looking for. There's clearly a lot of crossover going on between these two different things. So we get this idea of the prince that was promised and this idea of Azor Ahai that seem to be sort of conflated into the same thing. Now, we should probably just give a quick breakdown now of where this prince that was promised has come from. It's used quite a bit, sort of on and off in the main story. It's also taken quite a center stage, it has to be said, in House of the Dragon, which is semi-canon, but there's no reason, I think, to doubt that that bit of it does probably kind of echo what's going on in the main story. So the prince that was promised seems to be this idea that it's a prophecy that the Targaryens have had. Aegon the Conqueror certainly seems to have had it. When we get Aegon's dream, that's been figured quite strongly in House of the Dragon, and we have had confirmation that that does seem to come from George R. R. Martin. Attached to that vision that out of the north, then this ancient evil is going to come, and there needs to be a Targaryen sat on the Iron Throne to be leading people against this great existential threat. That person sat there on the Iron Throne, uniting the Seven Kingdoms, is the prince that was promised. Now, this gets added to over time. The most significant extra bit of detail that we get is much later when we get, during the time of Aegon V, Egg. So the Duncan Egg stories get that far, we will see this at some point. We get the Woods Witch, who accompanies Jenny of Oldstones to King's Landing. She prophesies that the prince that was promised would come from the line of Aerys II and Rhaella, who at the time weren't married. And so Jaehaerys II, forces them to get married. And so this adds in yet another layer to what's going on here. We've got this idea of the prince that was promised, who is Azor Ahai, which means that we're looking for a Targaryen from a very specific line. So when you dig through all of these clues in the various different places that we get, things that Melisandre talks about when she's talking about the fulfillment of prophecy, things that Maester Aemon says, things that We hear Rhaegar say through a vision that Dany has, and a couple of other things. We get quite a clear list of what it is we're looking for in terms of this prophesied hero. Someone who was born amidst salt and smoke, which is a little bit vague perhaps, but lots of people think that they can interpret that in a specific way. Someone whose coming is heralded in some way by a red comet blazing across the sky, or Melisandre has this phrase, they will come after a long summer when the stars bleed and the cold breath of darkness falls heavy on the world. So stars bleeding, red comet, that certainly seems to be something there. Someone associated with bringing a stone dragon or stone dragons to life. Someone who's going to be wielding this fiery sword, Lightbringer. Someone from the line of Aerys II and his wife Rhaella, and someone, according to Rhaegar, to whom belongs the Song of Ice and Fire. So that's the list of what we're looking out for. What we will do through this stream is we will start looking at some of these characters and who could possibly be Azor Ahai. I will name check 2 or 3 of them now, because really a lot of this does coalesce around a small number of people. The first person we do have to consider is Stannis, because Stannis is the person that Melisandre very clearly thinks is Azor Ahai. Now, that's why she was there on Dragonstone in the first place, is that she thinks that because this is salt and smoke, that in Dragonstone, they didn't really show it very well on the TV show. Dragonstone it's got all this sulphurous kind of smoke comes up from vents in the ground across the island, and obviously it's in the middle of the ocean, so there's a lot of salt spray, and so being born amidst salt and smoke, she thinks that Stannis will be reborn as Azor Ahai there. She also makes that happen when the red comet goes across the sky. The red comet is seen by almost everybody, so that doesn't specifically single him out. And she also gives him a sword, which looks fiery. Maester Aemon and a few others note that it isn't actually hot, so it looks like it's Lightbringer, but it's not Lightbringer. And then she is very strong on this idea of bringing stone dragons to life. Dragonstone, as the name suggests, again, they didn't show this particularly well on the TV show, but it's definitely strongly there in the books. Dragonstone, as a castle, is made of stone dragons. Intricate carving, basically, magical carving with sort of black fused stone means that you get the sconces, the torches are held up in kind of dragon claws. You get arches, is like they're made like the arch of a dragon tail. There's the great chimney looks like the snout of a dragon. It looks like there's dragons. The crenellations have got dragons on them, and so she is there wanting to hatch dragons, bring stone dragons to life. And this was why she was wanting Edric Storm. She wanted to sacrifice Edric Storm, and that would be the sacrifice of someone with King's blood, which would, she think, allow her to do that, and that would even further validate her claims about Stannis. That was the idea. So Stannis is the first person. I think it's probably fair to say that most people discount Stannis, if only because he's not from the line of Aerys II Rhaella, and Melisandre has made a lot of those signs happen, giving him this sword Lightbringer that doesn't really seem to be the sword Lightbringer, and so on. It's more about her wanting her interpreting it in this way rather than it actually being him. The person who people generally coalesce saying that most of these signs so far, you can clearly say that Dany is doing a lot of this. Born amidst salt and smoke, she was born on Dragonstone. So if we're taking that as justification for Dragonstone, she was born on Dragonstone. Her coming is heralded by a red comet. and associated with bringing stone dragon or dragons to life, she had the stone dragon eggs and brought them to life as the red comet was overhead. So that all kind of ties in together. She does come from the line of Eris II and his wife Rhaella. She's their daughter. And in terms of wielding Lightbringer, that's not really happened yet, but some people say, I mean, can Drogon not count as a fiery weapon? So she does seem to be meeting quite a few of these, and it's worth noting that the Faith of R'hllor corporately seems to have decided that this is her. They seem to have decided that she is the Azor Ahai reborn, and they are throwing the weight of the entire organization behind her. Melisandre, just to remind you, she's a rogue priestess. She's going off and doing her own thing. She wasn't sent there by the hierarchy. She's doing her own thing. The hierarchy of the church itself, massive across the entire continent of Essos, they have thrown their weight behind Dany. And then the third prime candidate is Jon. Jon, at the moment, doesn't fulfill many of these, although obviously with his parentage there, he would be the son of Rhaegar, and Rhaegar was the son of Aerys II Rhaella, so he would fit under that. In terms of the salt and smoke, and then bringing a stone dragon to life, and a fiery sword, it's entirely possible. I did a video a while ago about how Jon will come back from how we be brought back from the dead in the books. It is entirely possible. I mean, I wouldn't say likely, but all the facts seem to point to the fact that he will probably come back, his body be resuscitated in such a way that there's going to be fire, there's going to be the salt. We know that the wall is salty. So they're going to have that. So we can have smoke from the fire and salt from the wall. And his body is probably going to be frozen. So there will probably be a salt pile left over from whatever defrosting going on there. So salt and smoke is going on there. There's every chance he might have a sword, which might sort of catch fire in some way. So the imagery could work really well for him. We do also have to name check, I suspect, as a slightly more left field possibility, young Griff, Aegon VI, Fagon, whatever you want to call him. If he is the son of Rhaegar, then he also fits under this line. He's the third possible person that this could be, coming from the line of Aerys II and Rhaella. He doesn't seem to have met any of these other criteria, and I personally suspect that he's not that person. He's actually a Blackfire, but we do have to consider him as we're going through. Okay, so that's the sort of breakdown of what Azor Ahai is and what we should be looking out for. Let's have a go quickly into the chat. Madeline Jill saying, who in the main story could symbolize Nisa? Well, I think this is a really interesting question, because this depends on who symbolizes Azor Ahai. If we are going with the fact that we're going to have an Azor Ahai and a Nisa, which we'll dig into, I'm sure, at some point during the stream. But if you do, then it's their love. Now, I did do a video ages ago. I think it's come down, but I will redo it and put it back up. Which, before we had season 8, I should probably clarify, before we had season 8 of Game of Thrones, I worked through Dany's visions in the House of the Undying, and I came to the conclusion that it was very possible that Jon would kill her, stab her in the heart, and as she's Targaryen, for some magical means, as he draws his sword out, maybe that would become flaming sword. It was all very tragic. That seemed to match what I thought in the books at the time. I will go back and have a look at that to see whether I think that still kind of makes sense. But she will be betrayed another time. And in that instance, if that is the case, then he would be taking up the Azor Ahai role. She'll be taking up Messalina. But it could be the other way around. If she's taking on the Azor Ahai role, then maybe he could be taking on Messalina. So basically, the Messalina role is it's associated with the creation of the Sword Lightbringer, and they should be the love of the Azor Ahai figure. Okay, let's have a quick flick through. Maura Lee, hi there. Maura saying happy May Day or Beltane to people. Yes, May the 1st as I'm recording this. So happy May Day to people. Just a show of love and appreciation, Robert, for all you do. What can we look forward to as far as new merch and stories go? Well, thank you very much, first of all. I hugely appreciate your support. Thank you. In terms of new merch, I have to admit, I'm rubbish with the merch. There's probably merch down there somewhere if you're looking for it. I haven't had any thoughts about doing new merch. I'll have a think about it. In terms of new stories, I assume you're talking about The Well Told Tale, which is another channel that I have, where I just read audiobooks, just share them for free with the world. The best science fiction and fantasy stories ever written. And what's coming up? Well, we've got Journey to the Center of the Earth at the moment. We're doing with Jules Verne. That I think is the last one that I've got on my little forward plan. So I think after this, I'm probably going to do a Conan one. So that'll be something to look forward to. And there's also, I'm going to do a few re-recordings from earlier ones I did where the audio quality was terrible. So if you missed getting Frankenstein or War of the Worlds first time around, then they will both appear again at some point in the next year or so. But thank you very much. And Maura also saying hugs and love to the mods and all the great folks in the chat. Yeah, moderators, hi, great to see you. Let's do a little bit of early love for the moderators. If you are here in the chat, the reason why this is such a lovely place to be in the chat, to talk about stuff that we love, not worrying about being judged about anything, hopefully protected from any bots. I haven't seen any bots for a while, but that's probably because the moderators are getting rid of them whenever they do appear. But the moderators are the people who make all of that happen. So moderators, thank you. If you are in the chat, could you just give them a little bit of love too? I would hugely appreciate it. Think that's me caught up in the chat. Right, let's go to some questions from my patrons. Actually, Maura, yeah, I had a couple of questions from you, didn't I? So, saying, I know many fans feel Jon Snow would fit the Azor Ahai prophecy as the prince who was promised. Can you think of other people who could do? So, yeah, I kind of answered this one already, but perhaps knowing that you'd ask this question, I think, for me, in all honesty, the two characters who could are Jon and Dany. I think Stannis is very clearly not. I think Fagon, we'd have to see something soon in the next book in order for us to be actually believing that that's there. My sort of general thought is that there will probably be a lot of other characters who show some kind of Azor Ahai type vibes. We had Beric Dondarrion, for example, had his flaming sword, or Thoros of Myr had his flaming sword. And you've got a lot of characters who have the flaming sword or who will take on Sam randomly. He's Sam the Slayer. He's the person who's given hope to people. We can destroy the others. We just have to work out the ways. So there are going to be lots of characters who take up aspects of this Prince that was promised / Azor Ahai figure. But I think the two main names will be Jon and Dany. And you also asked why the myth and prophecy still fascinates fans to this day. I think it's a really interesting question. It's set up as a mystery and a driving force within the story in a world where prophecy clearly is true, can be true. By which we were looking at the Valence last week. Maggie the Frog's prophecies clearly seem to have been true. We get a huge amount of what was there in the House of the Undying, so certainly seems to be coming true. What the Ghost of High Heart was saying certainly seems to be coming true. There seems to be lots. This seems to be a thing which can happen in this world. And this is the central focus of this story, ultimately, is who is going to save humanity? How is humanity going to be saved? And if it is a person, then this is it. And we've got these clues, and I think they're good because these clues allow us to really narrow this down, but not completely. George R. R. Martin has not done this in a way that a lot of, and we'll get onto the trope in a moment, but a lot of this kind of like promised hero kind of trope, often it's very obvious that's the guy. We all know who the hero is going to be. The prophecy is referring to. Here we're kept guessing, and that's what keeps us engaged with it, because it's not just we're now just waiting for John or Danny or whoever to realize their fate and step up to the plate and things like that. We don't know who it's going to be, and they don't know, and maybe they never will. And does that make a difference? So there's a huge amount of that going on. And I think the other thing is that this has gained prominence the further forward we go through this story. And through the related things, it's the Prince That Was Promised has been a lot more emphasized in House of the Dragon, and the role of the Targaryens in this, because this is all linked in together with Aegon's dream. The Targaryens' role is there to be, according to this dream from Aegon, of course, their role is there to be uniting the Seven Kingdoms, which is what drove them to be so firm to be trying to get Dawn into the Seven Kingdoms, for example, and to be opposing the others when the others come. Now, I think I should probably just make one little House of the Dragon clarification here, which is when you had season 2, when Daemon had the vision through the Weirwood network, which sort of showed him a whole load of things, all leading up to Dany and the hatching of the dragons in Game of Thrones. The showrunner has confirmed that this is not them saying that in Game of Thrones Dany was Azor Ahai reborn. This was just a giving hope to the Targaryens kind of thing. So although they have been very focused on Dany as the sort of the link across from House of the Dragon all the way up to Game of Thrones, they are not claiming that this means that she is the Prince That Was Promised. Kais Ballerina, tinfoil. It's Rhaegar. Lyanna is Nisa Nisa. His sword was something else that I probably shouldn't say. And Jon is Lightbringer, the sword he forged, and that's why Nisa Nisa feels pain and ecstasy. Yeah, I've heard this. I think this was a favourite theory of Gemma, Secrets of the Citadel, back in the day. So Rhaegar thought. So in fact, Maester Aemon thought that Rhaegar was the Prince That Was Promised, and then Rhaegar himself seems to think that he was. And I don't know whether I've got the quote in front of me here. I may or may not. No, I don't think I do. Actually, unfortunately, I copied across a whole load of quotes, but Rhaegar, I thought, was what Maester Aemon says, because the Salt and the Smoke. Rhaegar was born at Summerhall. The smoke, obviously, the Summerhall burned down, and the smoke was from the tear. The salt was from the tears, because there was so much death and destruction going on there. So that was what Maester Aemon thought, that it was Rhaegar. Rhaegar read something in his scrolls, we're told, that convinced him that he must be a warrior. This is another aspect, of course. Azor Ahai was a warrior, and so he started to train as a warrior. As he came to the conclusion it wasn't him, and decided actually it was his son, Aegon. But could it have been him? Could he have killed Lyanna? Because if she died of complications from childbirth, then that will be, you could argue, him doing that to her, in one way of looking at these things. And then what is produced from that is Jon. That makes Jon Lightbringer, the sword. Yeah, I mean, as a kind of a thematic thing, I do quite like it. I think that you then have to say, so Azor Ahai doesn't do anything himself personally. He does not rally the people. He does not lead the fight against the others. That's just the sword that does that. So it doesn't completely hang together for me. But yeah, I certainly I understand the logic, and I say it's a different way of looking at it. And I should probably say, I will say this a lot this stream. My overall take is that after this story is all over, we look back on it, we will still be able to argue and debate about who Azor Ahai actually was, because you could look at it in a number of different ways. That's my general take. I don't think we're in a situation where George R. R. Martin has created his roster of possible candidates for this role, and at some point he'll just put a big arrow and say, it's this one, and from then on we get this perfect shining hero who's going to be leading the world. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be complicated, and afterwards we'll have to debate who it might have been. Right, let's go to Lady Pushkins. Do you think that maybe Azor Ahai does not exist, and the mixture of legend, prophecy, and belief has led to people focusing on one person when the whole point is working together to find peace and harmony? Maybe we always look for a central hero and become absorbed in seeking them out. Love your thoughts. I'm at work, and we'll try and pop into the chat. Well, hi, if you are there in the chat. What if Azor Ahai doesn't really exist? And this is just legends, and it should be about teaching us all to come together. Well, it is very noticeable that Azor Ahai, when Jon, having read the legend of Azor Ahai, he did come out and say even Azor Ahai didn't win his war on his own. He obviously had other people alongside him. And when you get the last hero, who seems to be the Westerosi kind of version of this hero, he starts out with 12 companions and a dog, and then goes and gets help from the children of the forest. So it's clearly, yes, it's him, but it's not just him. It's lots of people. And so I think, yeah, that's definitely one of the messages of this, but I don't think we can get around this idea that the legends speak of a person. And I mean, if we were to try and, it's a fool's game, but we'll try it anyway. But if we were to try and say, okay, George R. R. Martin, we're not going to take these stories as literal truth. What are the big messages coming out here? Is that the others, the Long Night, was pushed back in some way, and that there was a character. All the different legends seem to have a character, whether that's Azor Ahai, Last Hero, Yintar, whoever, a named person. So I think that's the sort of the big message coming out here, but that person does not work on their own. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. See what else is going on. Kirsty Angel saying if Azor is a play on Azure, it means blue sky or helper. A high means mother. So a blue sky helper mother. Interesting. And Mark Sheeser saying, where do the conditions for the prophecy even come from? And since they should be taken as myth, can they be relied on? I mean, I don't know when you're talking about the conditions for the prophecy. There does seem to be there seem to be things written down in a shy that have been taken as clear. When Melisandre sort of a clear understanding of what this prophecy is. When Melisandre is explaining this, she does this several times. Often people don't even ask her. She comes out and starts telling them about, and this is Stannis, and he is da da da. She does use the same formulation of words a couple of times, which seems to imply that she's sort of reciting from something which is written down. Now, how recently that was written down, who knows? But the implication is that this is lost knowledge to most of the world, which was kept in a shy. Some of that then kept and fed through to the faith of Valor, which has kept their bit and understanding going. It's worth saying that a shy, the way we see a shy, is somewhere off to the east, mysterious, and we're never really going to go there. George R. Martin's confirmed we may see it through somebody's memories or something like that, but we're not actually, no characters, POV characters, physically going to be going to a shy now. But that wasn't always the case. The case is that used to be that Dany was going to go to a shy when Quaithe gives her kind of rather confusing advice. Dany says, you think I should be going to a shy? And the answer is basically yes. So she was going to go to a shy before George R. Martin kind of shifted things around. And she was going to be getting knowledge there. What that knowledge is, she's still going to be receiving that knowledge, but it's almost certainly going to be from different avenues, one of which is the books. Do you remember Jorah? This is one of my favourite recent-ish clarifications from George R. Martin. Do you remember Jorah gave a wedding gift of 3 books of Westerosi history, basically, and to Dany, way back in like her second chapter of Game of Thrones, and somebody once asked George R. R. Martin, did she ever read them? And he said, no, she's not really much of a reader. But do you know who is? Tyrion. And he's currently on his way to Meereen. So the clear implication is that there's something there that Tyrion will be reading because he's a voracious reader, and he will learn something, and presumably he will pass that information on to Dany. There's also Marwyn, who has knowledge of all of this, has been to a shy, so he's going to be providing a huge amount of knowledge going on there. And we also get Mokoro, the Red Priest, who has been sent by the Faith of the Law to go and support Dany. He's going to Meereen in order to meet her too. So she's got a sort of a triangulation of bits of lore and knowledge coming to her that will greet her when she comes back to Meereen. Question from Sarah Awesome Sauce. Hi there, saying just love and support for the channels. Dan the dog and the fantastic moderators. You're all aces in my book. Well, thank you very much. You're an ace in my book. That's very kind of you. Constantine Tranos just in the chat asking, how will Jon and Dany's reactions on being Azor Ahai compare to other Targaryens? Will they let themselves be influenced by the prophecy or use the belief of others in it to better attain their goals? I mean, I think this is quite an interesting one because Dany will be told by Makoro, almost certainly, that she is the chosen one. How will she react to that? I mean, it's quite hard to tell without knowing exactly how it's framed, but the clear implication is that the faith of R'hllor, with its thousands of priests and millions of adherents, is now on your side. She is wanting to be launching an invasion of Westeros. She will probably, at a political level, want to be leveraging that in support of her. Jon may well find that someone like Melisandre decides he is Azor Ahai. There was this really interesting bit where we get Melisandre POV chapter. We learn so much from the one Melisandre POV chapter we've had. She starts bragging in her mind about how she's really good at seeing things in the flames, been better than everyone else. She's studied this for so long. However, nowadays she's hunting for Stannis. She asks to see Azor Ahai, and all she sees is snow, and the snow is capitalized. Which who is Snow? Jon Snow. She asks to see Azor Ahai, and she sees Jon Snow. So at some point, probably, she will think, actually, I'm being shown Jon Snow. And if Jon does come back roughly in the way that I'm imagining that he might do, then that will be a huge Azor Ahai symbolism for her. If you could just imagine that she's sacrificing I'm not going to go into all of the build up to this. Feel free to look at the video. But if she's sacrificing King's blood in order to try and save Azor Ahai, and then Jon seems to come back to life at that moment amidst salt and smoke, and let's say he's got his sword with him and his sword is fiery, and he emerges at that moment. And it turns out that he's a secret Targaryen, and so it's like bringing dragons to life. You could imagine she might fall in behind him. I suspect Jon won't want that. But he will have to deal with it. Right, let's have a look at Cannibal the Dragon, been a channel member for 1 month. If you're if you'd like to support this channel, thank you, by the way. If you'd like to support this channel, the best way to do that is via Patreon. There's a link down there somewhere. If for whatever reason you don't want to do it via Patreon, you can be a channel member here. Thank you. I hugely appreciate that too. And that means that you can get your name highlighted a bit in the chat so I see it. And Cannibal the Dragon says, hello, Robert, how are you? And Dan the Dog, very well, thank you. Do you know which Valyrian steel sword is mentioned after ice? Is it Longclaw or Blackfire? I don't know what you mean by it mentioned after ice. In what order? I have to admit, I'm not 100% certain what you're saying there. If you're wondering like which is the most well known, I mean in the world it would be Blackfire. But yeah, if you want to just clarify that in the chat somewhere, I'll try and pick up on that in just one moment. In the books, is that what you mean? So what is mentioned most in the books? Well, Longclaw will probably have, I've not done a full count, Longclaw will probably have the most name checks in the books. But Blackfire as a sword is the more famous. This is the Sword of Kings. This is the sword of Aegon the Conqueror. This is the sword that is instantly recognizable, we're told. Longclaw was the Valyrian steel sword for kind of a an upper mid-ranking northern family on an island a long way away from everyone. Most people didn't know what that sword looked like. Probably wouldn't even be able to name it. So yeah, the Blackfire is much, much more significant in the books. Let's go to Commander Ray, saying, "Hello, Robert and Dan. Hope all is well. Thank you." We all know the one true King Jon Snow, aka Aegon the Sixth, aka the White Wolf, aka King of the North, aka Azor Ahai, will win the day by yelling at an ice dragon. I mean, Jon is the most classically placed character to be the hero, and is likely what prophecy refers to when saying the prince that was promised. Yeah. However, while he might be our Aragorn, we all know the true hero of Lord of the Rings was Samwise "I can carry you" Gamgee, and that's why my question come in. Who do you think will be that unsung and vital hero to the story that will subvert the Azor Ahai reborn prophecy? And while I did wax superlatives, I'm uncertain if Jon's role will go beyond bringing forces together, and whether he'll have a larger role, whether that's stopping Dany from conquering the world or stopping the dead. I do not believe Jon is the intended Azor Ahai, as he is the actual one of prophecy. But George R. R. Martin doesn't want that to matter in a world of chance and multiple powers at play. Okay, so if you'll forgive me sort of paraphrasing that, the way I'm taking this is George R. R. Martin does not like fantasy tropes much. And so the idea that we have the person who has been set up most classically to be the prince that was promised figure probably won't be the person who actually does the role. Probably we're looking at more of a supporting real hero like Sam in The Lord of the Rings. This does remind me of, I've not said it for a while, but I think it's still relevant. My kind of pithy take on Jon Snow is that George R. R. Martin is writing him as if he's Aragorn, the coming hero with prophecy surrounding him, etc., etc. In reality, he's Frodo. He will do an incredibly central part of this, and but it will be too much for him. He will save the world, but not for himself. And this is why at the end of it, he has to leave the Seven Kingdoms and go elsewhere because it's just too much for him. So he is, Jon Snow is taking on the Frodo role. He has a Sam as well, it has to be said. And if you're looking for who the Sam is, then Sam is Sam. Is he the person who's the real hero? Well, I think George R. R. Martin, he obviously doesn't like this idea of hero, but there are very clearly 2 or 3 characters in the books that are they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they're good. They're undeniably good characters. The other clear, obvious one is Brienne. These are characters who are kind of like shining lights in this world. And in the same way that Sam is kind of held up in that way in The Lord of the Rings. So we might expect Samwell Tarly, to do some actually hugely important things. He already has killing of the first other, discovering the truth about dragon steel. Is that Valyrian steel? That could well work. He's going to go down to the Citadel. He's going to learn a lot, and he's going to come back up. And that learning is almost certainly going to help out. That it also, I do wonder this idea of him being a coward. You do have to wonder whether or not this is because this is played so much. Is he going to have a great heroic moment? at the end. Is he going to have a... Because even when he did his Sam the Slayer thing, it's not like he was there charging into combat. I'm going to get you. Da, da, da. He was scared for his life, and he was just doing things, anything he could. Is he going to have a moment where he carries John, as it were? Perhaps he will. Gilio saying, how many religions or cultures have Azor Ahai mythology that we know of? Am I wrong in saying the Andals don't? No, well, we're not told. So the Andals have the Faith of the Seven, and they don't appear to have a sort of an associated legend from the first long night. Plenty of others do have that. We sort of name checked them a lot earlier. So you get certainly what we now think of as UT, the predecessor kind of Great Empire of the Dawn, things like that. They are from that same part of that world. That's where a lot of these legends seem to have come from. Ashai, even further to the east, this is where, initially, where this Azor Ahai comes from. But a lot of the other religions, we're not told enough about them to be sure, but they don't appear to be this kind of apocalyptic thing. With the Faith of R'hllor, we see the Red Priest and see the rest of it, but their theology is Manichaean in a way. There's a really good god, and there's a sort of almost equal and opposite really bad godlike figure in this constant battle with each other. And then there is going to be this end final battle, apocalyptic stuff between the two sides, and this is where Azor Ahai comes in. That element doesn't seem to be in many of the other religions that we know of. So that does seem to be not unique. There may well be others, but yeah, the most clear example of this. Let's go to Vance saying, can I talk about other literary parallels of Azor Ahai and other fantasy world saviors that are close to Azor Ahai? I mean, I'll happily talk for a little while on this. I used the word trope a bit earlier. This does have a real, writing circles, a name, the Chosen One trope, which you will know it, and in the chat, feel free to, you can throw names out there. You will know this character because it's the Chosen One in particularly fantasy settings. This is a figure who is there by prophecy. Is going to lead in some way the forces of good against the forces of evil at the end of this big story they've got. Often this person, their identity is secret, often even from themselves. They might be they might be an orphan. They almost certainly will grow up not knowing about the great fate that is on them. So they grow up in some kind of seclusion, and then the world, they're introduced to the wider world by this sort of wizardy figure or great mentor figure, and then they go off and do fulfill what the prophecy demands of them. This is tweaked in various different ways in different stories, but you can come up with the many examples. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, Harry Potter is a really good example of this. There's the prophecies about him, and he grew up not knowing about any of this. And the wizard figure comes in, and at the end of this, there's some irony twist, but he fulfills his fate. Randall Thor in The Wheel of Time is another example of a slightly different version of this. Aragorn, you could say, is a very similar version. He grew up without a father. He until he was 21, he didn't even know his identity. He didn't know who he was. And then he learns about these prophecies and he grows into them, fulfills them. So this is often conflated with the hero's journey idea. That there is a difference in that this as a trope, or the hero's journey, the hero often has a choice in some way. Do they do this or not? With the chosen one as a trope, they don't really. They might think they do. They might make choices to go and do different things, but ultimately, fate and the prophecy guide them down this one path. So there's a lot of the more you start looking at these kinds of stories, the more you'll find that this is out there. Commander Ray, I think we are getting the prince that was promised wrong. It's clearly Ghost. I mean, imagine putting up with John. The prince that was promised wrong is clearly Ghost. I mean, John. I mean, John probably will go into Ghost. This when he dies, his spirit, his soul will go into his bonded animal. And maybe that could make John is then of one, joined to him. And so if we're saying that Prince was promised this is John, then that perhaps you could say that transfers that. Maybe I'm overthinking this, Commander Ray. It would be. This will be an interesting. I don't think we're going to get a POV of it, but could you imagine if we got a POV of John in Ghost? That would be pretty amazing. Right, let's go to Sarah Arpegos saying, Hola, Robert. The OG Azor Ahai, if ever he was, apparently was not able to defeat the others, but probably have a truce of sorts. QED, they are back. Do you think that they can be defeated now, and what might have changed? Oh, this is so the QED there make absolute sense in that clearly they didn't ultimately defeat the others. Whatever Azor Ahai did, pushed them back, got rid of them for a long time, but they didn't even think that they'd done it because they built the wall. They set up the Night's Watch. They put in place things ready for when they returned. So what happened? We don't know what happened. We have to be honest about this. It's not 100% certain. The implication does seem to be that there was some kind of battle. This is a slight digression away from what you're asking, but I will come back to it. If I had to try and draw a line through the three long night story bits that we have, the last hero who set off looking for help, eventually got some help from the children of the forest who gave him weapons that he could use. Then we get Azor Ahai, who we're told forged a mighty sword that he then used to kill monsters with. And then we get the story of the Battle of the Dawn, which is referenced various times throughout the story. It's also in a song, the Night's Watch sing. In that, the first Night's Watch, they defeat the others. And if I had to draw a line through this, it would be something like this hero guy heads off and eventually finds help from the children of the forest who help him learn what weapons could be used to defeat the others. The Azor Ahai thing comes in. That's making some equivalent of dragon steel, Valyrian steel. And then they're arming the Night's Watch with this and dragon glass or whatever, and that means that they win a physical battle with them. But the others, having thought that they were unbeatable, realize now that they're not, and then they go hiding off somewhere in the north. Humans go, well, they might come back. We'd better set up our defenses, hence the wall. being put there. That also kind of answers the what's going on in the prologue, because you get this time when one of the others is fighting Sir Waymar Royce, and all the rest of them are looking. They're seeing what's going on, and when his sword shatters, they all start laughing, and it's like, yeah, that the others have come back, and humanity's not got those funky magic swords that they used to. We can still kill these guys. So that would be where I would sort of tie it all together if I had to do it, running kind of a thread between all of those. So I think the situation is probably the same, that humanity now could try and get these weapons. Where can we get Valyrian steel weapons from? What about dragon glass? Can we get enough of that from somewhere? So humanity might be able to do a bit of that, but that wouldn't end the threat. Again, the others would just go back and wait some more time and then come back again. So for me and my money, what changes is that we will discover how they came about, how they were created, if they were created. It wouldn't surprise me if it's something sort of like the TV show. The children of the others created, children of the forest created the others. And then it becomes a matter of how do we finally get rid of them, ultimately get rid of them, is to undo the magic that created them in the first place. And that, I think, will require Bran more than an actual physical battle. So I don't think anything fundamentally has changed. I just think that this time humanity might have a bit more information and know what to do with it. Let's go to Corvus Corax, saying, "Good evening, Robert and good boy Dan. Could you speculate on the use of two separate names, Azor Ahai and the Prince that was promised? On the surface, it fits that these are names from two separate cultures for one person, but George R. Martin has deeper layers to his writings. Is there one prophecy over two continents, or two prophecies blended by time?" It's an interesting question. My take is that the Azor Ahai prophecy seems to be the same one as the Prince that was promised prophecy, as in the things you're looking for, the list. And the two characters who, as far as we know, have studied this the most, Aemon and Melisandre, there's not even a raised eyebrow at the idea that this is the same thing. It's just where is the Prince that was promised? There he is. There's Azor Ahai. Okay, that's who you're referring to. You think this is the same thing. The clues that Maester Aemon was looking for, born amidst salt and smoke, are the same things that Melisandre was looking for, born amidst salt and smoke. So it's the same thing, but it's sort of been rebranded for the Targaryens, is my kind of best take on how this is. If this starts with Aegon, I mean, it may go even as far back as Daenerys the Dreamer. We don't know, but if it starts with Aegon, with his vision of the others coming in, and this idea that the Targaryens have this role, it's basically saying that Azor Ahai reborn thing, that's going to come from our line. And then it sort of gets focused in and focused in and focused in until we've got, actually it's coming from the line of Aerys II and Rhaella. And at that point, the Targaryen family tree had been pruned just down to that family. And so when we're saying there's a limited number of people this could be, we can name all of this, because Aerys and Rhaella, they had 3 children. They had Rhaegar, who's dead, and Viserys, who's dead, and Dany. So Dany is possible. But Rhaegar then had 3 children. Aegon, who's probably dead, but might be Fagon. The guy claiming to be him, young Griff. He had Rhaenys, who's dead, and Jon. So out of all of the Targaryens that there are possibly, really, it's Dany, it's Jon, and possibly if young Griff is Aegon, then him. Now, if you wish to make the link across to the dragon must have three heads, that's the obvious one to use, and obvious line of thinking to go down, because there are three people there who are potentially Targaryens, particularly with Maester Aemon gone, who was like, I'm too old, I can't do this. But it's a terrible thing for a Targaryen to be on their own. The dragon must have three heads. Here we go, we've got three. Rhaegar definitely thought the dragon must have three heads. He wanted to have three children because he thought they would be the three heads of the dragon. So it wouldn't surprise me if at some point that gets unpacked by someone in the story as an idea. Hang on, three Targaryens, three heads of the dragon. Maybe they should all be working together to be this Azor Ahai. UCLA Jedi Knight. Yeah, so thank you. Tyrion isn't a Lannister. This is a good point. I've said many times, Tyrion, I and ah about this probably more than any other theory, this idea that Tyrion is the Mad King's bastard. Also, I did a video suggesting perhaps Cersei might be the Mad King's bastard child. And potentially Jaime, but it gets complicated at that point. Go and watch the video if you want me to unpack all of that. In which case, are they not potentially Prince that was promised? I personally would say they might be Targaryen, but they are not of the line of Aerys II and Rhaella. They would potentially be of the line of Aerys, but not Rhaella. So they do not then fit this set of criteria that we're working with. So, and it's the same with Stannis. Stannis has got Targaryen blood. His grandmother was a Targaryen, so he has got Targaryen ancestry, but he is not from the line of Aerys and Rhaella. Let's go to Stephen. As readers and viewers, we tend to conflate the prophecies, Prince that was promised and Azor Ahai reborn, and treat them interchangeably. The Game of Thrones TV series contributed to this, but as I understand it, they are distinct. One is a Targaryen prophecy about one of their descendants, which might be a family secret, while the other is a teaching from the faith of R'hllor about the second coming of their messianic savior. These are separate beliefs from different cultures and different contexts. I might be wrong, but I don't believe Melisandre in the books ever refers to Stannis as the prince that was promised or born amidst salt and smoke, and she might not even be aware of those terms. Can we be sure that the prophecies are connected and about the same person? Well, let me just quickly pick up on that. You've got another point here. I think I've kind of answered most of these things already. She definitely talks about salt and smoke, although I think when she does it, it says smoke, smoke and salt rather than salt and smoke. It says it the other way around, but it's the same thing. That's what took her to Dragonstone in the first place. So that's definitely there. She and Aemon clearly think that the two are exactly the same. I don't think that we need to worry about this too much. I think they are pretty much the same thing, but they're different prophetic traditions of the same thing, if that makes sense. Something else that often seems to get overlooked is there's at least one other prophecy, the Dothraki prophecy about the horse that will mount the world, which is about a hero conquering the world and not saving it. That prophecy might also be about the same person, Dany, or be completely unrelated, and a reminder of how unreliable prophecies can be. Yes, it's definitely a reminder of how unreliable prophecies can be. So the stallion that mounts the world is this Dothraki prophecy of this great Carl who will take over the whole world. And if you'll remember the scene in Base Dothrak, Dany's there, she's eating the horse's heart. And what's going on, that's the bit kind of the visual we remember, but what's going on there is that they're wanting the Dosh Coleen to be prophesying good prophecies about her unborn child. And the member of the Dosh Coleen who's doing this starts shaking and being really scared and saying, this is the stallion who mounts the world. And everyone's like, what? It's here. And yeah, this is a massive thing. We often overlook this, but this is the prophecy within the Dothraki world was that Dany's child, who would have been the child of a Targaryen and the greatest Khal of his age, that would kind of make sense. However, obviously, we get Rhaego, as the child was going to be named, doesn't get to do that, dies before even being born. Why does that happen? Well, it's because Miri Mazdur has heard this prophecy, and she thinks, I'm going to try and stop that. I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen, because the stallion that mounts the world, it sounds great from a Dothraki perspective, but what that means is that across the whole world, towns and cities are going to be burnt to the ground, people sold off into slavery, pillaging and horrendous things happening everywhere. Miri Mazdur did not want that to happen, and so she basically killed Rhaego to stop that bit of prophecy. Now, that was a bit of prophecy. I think that was unconnected to the prophecies of Azor Ahai, reborn, prince that was promised. However, it is a reminder from George R. R. Martin that people can try to stop prophecies from happening, which obviously is what, say, Cersei is trying to do. Okay, let's go to Desert Stormborn Charlie 1-1 saying it'd be some irony if Griff Aegon is actually a good dude but doesn't get the throne, and then we're left with just bad choices again for a minute. Yeah, so this is going slightly aside here. Having said he's the third possible option here, he is being presented thus far, we'll have to see how this goes, as being probably he's going to be a good king. Probably he will come into, at some point in the Winds of Winter, he'll come into King's Landing and he'll probably govern wisely and the people will probably love him. But then Dany will arrive and there will be quite a lot of tension, let's put it that way. So he will be there and we're probably going to be invited to think he's not actually who he claims to be. He's not actually the person who should be sat on the Iron Throne. But he seems to be doing an all right job. Which then also leads us to wonder, is he going to try and adopt some of this prince that was promised? If he starts hearing about this, he might find out that his father, Rhaegar, thought that he was the prince that was promised. So it's entirely possible that and he was, when he was conceived, there was a red comet above King's Landing. So, you could, and he was born on Dragonstone. So born amidst salt and smoke. So you could make an argument that, yeah, maybe this person is, and he just hasn't had this chance to fulfill these other parts of the prophecy yet. So give him a fiery sword and let him have a go. will he? I don't know this. It's just speculation, but will he start to believe it himself? Could this be part of the plot, that he finds out these prophecies that are there, and then he feels that's his role to go off and face the others, rather than Danny suddenly deciding that she wants to go off and do this? Maybe he's the one who kind of convinces her. I don't know. It's one way that George R. Martin could go with this. Um, right, let's go to um, Stephen. To help understand the legend and prophecy of Azor Ahai, could you tell us what we know about the history of the R'hllor religion? Has it been around since the beginning of recorded history, or was it founded more recently? How widespread is it, and who are its worshippers? Do they fight holy wars against other cultures? Um, and he says in A Dance with Dragons, when Tyrion watches Benero's sermon in Volantis, he preaches that Daenerys is Azor Ahai, but he seems to believe that her mission is to free the faithful of Essos from slavery, not travel to a distant land to save the world from an army of the dead. So what's going on? Well, first of all, R'hllor. We don't know about the origins. We know that Azor Ahai, or we're told that the Azor Ahai myth, that came from Ashai. The idea of like this being the light against the darkness feels like this might have come out from the first long night, and a remembrance of that. This idea of the fire. We've got a fiery sword. They're loving their night fires, have to keep going against the night. The night is dark and full of terrors. All of this imagery feels like it's the kind of thing that could have come from there. And as their apocalyptic worldview is centered around the hero, with coming again of the hero who they think saved humanity the first time around, that would be my guess, is that this is a faith which emerged out of the first long night, and then took the legends of it and turned that into their prophecies. So that's that. Then you were asking about Beneri. Now, for those who don't know who this is, he appears to be the high priest in the temple in to R'hllor in Volantis, which is massive, 3 times the size of the Great Sept, we're told. And he seems to be the one who's kind of calling the shots and sending out people and things like that on behalf of the religion, the faith. We see him very briefly. Tyrion sort of passes through the outer courtyards of the temple, and he's there preaching to the masses. He's atop this pillar, and as he's sort of like talking, his voice is projecting out across the whole area. Everyone can hear him, and sort of this kind of light show is going on in the sky. It's all kind of impressive. He's whipping the people up into this frenzy. Tyrion thinks this is the people here, the congregation, for want of a better word, the feeling among them is very similar to what it felt like in King's Landing just before that massive riot broke out. So that's the kind of feel we've got there, that this is going to be a huge rebellious force. Do not think of this as just being like a few priests in R'hllor, just being a few priests. This is massive. This is like the slaves worship. Many of the slaves in Volantis worship the lower class people's sailors a lot worship this god, and they are being worked up into this revolutionary frenzy. So expect a massive people's army at some point to be rising up. If Dany and her fleet arrive near Volantis, that could well coincide with Benero just calling on the people to rise up against their overlords. So yeah, there's all that going on. So Benero was there, and he's this kind of really kind of charismatic leader. And what we're told about him this is Haldon Halfmaester, who's one of the people in young Griff's sort of group. He says to Tyrion, Benero has sent forth the word from Valantis. Her coming, this is Daenerys, her coming is the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. From smoke and salt was she born to make the world anew. She is Azor Ahai returned, and her triumph over darkness will bring a summer that will never end. Death itself will bend its knee, and all those who die fighting in her cause shall be reborn. And elsewhere we read a little bit of theology is after a long summer, an evil cold darkness shall fall on the world. Azor Ahai, wielding the sword Lightbringer, shall be reborn to combat this darkness. So, to my mind, it feels like the religiousified version of what we kind of know about Aegon's dream, Aegon's prophecy. Yes, it's using slightly different language. That her triumph over darkness will bring us summer that will never end. Death itself will bend its knee. You get an evil, cold darkness, and then Azor Ahai wielding Lightbringer, reborn to combat this darkness. That's very religious, apocalyptic kind of language, but actually is the same sort of feeling as you get from the prophecy that in House of the Dragon we're hearing about, that a Targaryen must stand against the dark and the cold that comes from the far north. It's the same kind of feeling, but different language use. Let's go to a question from who we got. Sir Friend saying, Happy Thursday, Robert, and to you too. It's John, mystery solved. There we go. Whilst I do believe it is John, I hope George leaves it ambiguous so we can continue debating long after the story completes. On the original Azor Ahai, though, do you think we will ever hear more? Perhaps Bran in looking to see how others can be defeated? I'm intrigued as to how the others were pushed back without actually being wiped out. Best wishes, warmest regards. And to you, so yeah, I mentioned this a little while ago that we do have the story of the Battle for the Dawn, which seems kind of connected in with this, and in that we're told it's the Night's Watch. Perhaps that's just a later edition. Who knows? Don't care too much about the details. George R. Martin will always tell us. They charge into battle and push back the others. So it does appear that there was a battle, a confrontation with these new weapons that humanity have now got. What the last hero got help from the children of the forest, Azor Ahai getting Lightbringer, whatever it is, getting these weapons, that does seem to have pushed them back. So that's I think we're probably left with a situation where a big battle was won, the others were clearly defeated. You could see a couple of others survived who headed off into far north. And then humanity's going, well, at some point they'll come back, surely. We'll build this big wall. We'll set up the Night's Watch properly. We'll get ready for whenever they do return. And that is how it kind of feels to me it happened. When they come back, they're obviously going to be concerned first and foremost about, does humanity still have those weapons that were so bad for us last time? Kimberly Fay, what do you think the current politics are of the faceless men against a dead will rise religion that is promised? Well, when you're saying a dead will rise, I'm assuming you're picking up on what I was talking about before, when Benero was saying death itself will bend its knee, and all those who die fighting in her cause shall be reborn. Well, I'll answer your question in just 1 second. if you don't mind, because I probably should have said it at the time. Death itself will bend its knee. All those who die fighting in her cause shall be reborn. Does that not just, we might be reading too much into this, but does that not just kind of give you the feel of, we've had Beric who gets brought back by Thoros of Myr? Are we going to have all of these red priests bringing anyone who gets slayed? The red priests bring them back to keep fighting. Is that the image we're going to be having here? Because that's what it sounds like to me. But anyway, you're asking what the Faceless Men's sort of response to this is. I think it's exactly as you probably were hinting at or thinking at when you're writing that question, is that they don't want that. All men must die. If you've missed my, I did a series of videos on this ages ago. The Faceless Men on the TV show were basically shown as some rather cool assassins. In the books, it's very clear that actually this is a religion or a cult, depending on how you look at it, but it's got a very clear set of beliefs. All men must die. That's not just a Valam Oculus, Valam Daheris. There's not just cool catchphrases. That's actually a statement of their belief. The temple that they have, and it is a temple, it's a temple of black and white. The House of Black and White is a temple. People go there to be drinking the water and to go to sleep and not shut their eyes. That is what it is. Everyone must die. And so they will look around the world and go, what on earth is going on? Death is now no longer the end. And they will hate that, every single kind of aspect of that. So they won't want the faith of Valor to actually see that happen. Will they oppose it? Yeah. They'll also be opposing the others, the Army of the Dead, because they are controlling dead bodies. They will also be wanting to oppose Qyburn, who seems to be bringing people back as well. They probably would oppose someone like John. So there's a lot there. We haven't yet had enough to know exactly what, but Jaqen being in Old Town certainly, seemingly looking for lost knowledge, certainly suggests that they've got a bigger plan in mind. I don't think, as some people have suggested, I don't think he's just there to kill a person. That doesn't seem to be what's going on. He seems to be there actively trying to find the keys to get into the secret parts of the Citadel in order to be able to get some knowledge. What that knowledge is, perhaps it'll even have something to do with dragons, who knows? But we can speculate, but we do not yet know for certain. But yeah, I think they'll be opposed, definitely 100%. Let's go to Nick Gull. Saying my new favourite tinfoil about Azor Ahai is that Tommen is actually Azor Ahai reborn and Sir Pounce is his Nisa Nisa. Yeah, I'll just let that hang. My question is, if my understanding is correct, the last hero and Azor Ahai are essentially the same, but just from different cultures. If that's the case, why would people from Azor Ahai culture, the Red Priests, not assume he would be somewhere on that side of the world? Someone from the same culture. Having it be some random Westerosi seems off to me. So they have their set list of things that they're looking for, and they come to the conclusion that this is Dany, and it's probably worth just reiterating that Dany is special. She's different. If they're looking for somebody from Essos, she's in Essos and has lived in Essos all of her life. If they're looking for somebody who's from Westeros, then that's what she considers her home, the land that she thinks that she should be ruling. if they think that she should be coming from Valyria, then she does. If they think that she should be coming from the Dothraki Sea, then she does. If they think that she should be coming from Dragonstone, she does. There are so many things that you can. Dany is really hard to pin down as like a person who is just this. She is lots of different things. So it's quite easy for them to sort of pin whatever they want onto her. Where would they be looking? They, I mean, we don't know enough about their organization, but they certainly seem to think that they could do a little bit more to convert Westeros. This is why Thoros of Myr was there. He was sent by the High Command to go. They thought, oh, Eris II, he's particularly in favor of fire, isn't he? Let's send somebody over there, a fire priest, and see whether they can, convert him. So that was the idea. But then Thoros basically just sort of got drunk. So that was the plan. It didn't quite go right. Melisandre was a rogue priestess. She went off on her own volition. But it's often overlooked, there are temples to R'hllor in Westeros, but they tend to be just in the sort of the big port cities, just somewhere on the docks, rather than a massive temple like we get in Volantis. There's also one in Braavos that we read about. They're dotted around a lot of Essos, but they would see themselves as a world religion rather than just a religion in an area. And so they would probably be looking across the world for Azor Ahai. Sydney Rose saying the line between undead and reborn seems pretty thin. Yeah, I agree with you completely. It's, I mean, Jon, this is why I think the symbolism of Jon coming back will feel to Melisandre like it's reborn. She will look and see he was gone and then he's come back. So is he undead at that point? How do we actually kind of categorize him? George R. Martin sort of hinted ages ago, that Firewhite is what we're going to be categorizing him as, because he said, I haven't got the quote in front of me, but it was to someone like Time Magazine, a big article years ago, and he talked about Beric Dondarrion being a Firewhite. So we have the Ice Whites, what we often think of as the Whites. Those are Ice Whites, and then Beric Dondarrion is a Firewhite. And he says, and he is, I don't remember if he used the exact word, but he is the foreshadowing for Jon. So the clear implication is that he's going to come back as a Firewhite, but you could interpret that as being reborn, not having gone at all because he was going and hiding in Ghost for a while. You can look at it in lots of different ways. So it's, as is often the case with George R. R. Martin, he's not just giving us one easy categorization of something. Different characters in the story will view things in different ways. Let's go to Alhad, asking a question after a long time. Hi, Alhad, great to see you. There are two legends, Last Hero in the north and Azor Ahai in eastern Essos. Both refer to obtaining weapons to defeat the others. The assumption here is that both refer to the same others. Were there two different weapons and two different fights, or are the stories two versions of the same event? I mean, I think I've answered this one in different ways on various digressions already in the live stream. But yeah, I think the clear implication for me is that they're different versions of roughly the same thing that happened, or telling different parts of the same story. For what it's worth, if I wanted to, I said that if I'm drawing a line through these, we get Last Hero going off, learning about getting weapons from the Children of the Forest. Then we get Azor Ahai forging a weapon. I do wonder whether this is what we think of as Valyrian steel, but it's also could be called dragon steel. That sounds a lot like dragon glass. It makes me wonder whether one of the ingredients of Valyrian steel is going to turn out to be dragon glass. Um, Valyrian steel is dark. They didn't really show this very well on the TV show, but it's dark as a weapon, uh, like and rippled is what it looks like, which kind of feels a little bit like dragon glass added into steel. And if there was dragon glass in this steel, that would explain how a Valyrian steel sword might be able to defeat one of the others, because it's using steel to deliver dragon glass to cut the other. So yeah, I mean, I do wonder whether the Children of the Forest, the last hero, whoever this is, uh, went to the Children of the Forest, and the Children of the Forest says, "Yeah, okay, so the cheat code for them is that dragon glass kills them," and then humanity goes away and forges a sword that includes dragon glass in it, and that is what they use to fight the others with. So it's a working theory. We haven't got enough evidence to say that that is definitely the case, but that feels about right to me. Let's go to Madeline Tyrell Dane. Hi, Robert. I think you've said before that George R. R. Martin will leave us no single clear answer to who Azor Ahai was, and will leave it open to interpretation. However, how do you think he will go about doing this? For example, will Jon and Dany both fulfill most elements of the prophecy? Secondly, could you please speak on whether House Dane might be connected to this prophecy? For example, regarding Lightbringer. Well, House Dane, I will answer in just 1 second. How might George R. R. Martin leave it open? Well, I think by allowing both of them, first of all, to fulfill the identifying things in different ways. At the moment, Dany clearly has the turning stone dragon, bringing stone dragons to life. I think Jon will have things that he will do that will make you go, "Oh, maybe you could interpret that." For example, I've theorized elsewhere that he will be the one to blow the horn of winter to bring the stone giants from the earth, which you could say dragons, giants. Yeah, in the legends, these kinds of things might sort of get morphed one into another, and he's going to bring them stone giants to life. Similarly, you get a flaming sword. You could certainly see how Jon could get a flaming sword. He's already had a dream of a flaming sword. Bloodraven will want to give him a flaming sword. Dany has got her dragons that you could argue is a flaming sword. So I think that we will get to a point where both of them have got this list of things all ticked off, if you want to interpret things in that way. And then they will both play an important role in defeating the others. They've both had Azor Ahai-ish dreams, incidentally. Probably both planted. Jon's by Bloodraven and Dany's by Quaithe, it has to be said, because who wakes them up afterwards? A raven and Quaithe. But yeah, Jon's was him standing atop the wall with a flaming sword, chopping down dead people, and Dany was flying over a field full of ice creatures and then melting them with dragon flame. So they both had those kind of things. The link with Bloodraven and Quaithe, I think, is a really strong one, because if you go with me and say that Quaithe is probably Shira Seastar, Shira Seastar and Bloodraven were really close. They were lovers. He's obviously gone up north of the wall. She's obviously headed off over to Ashai. They probably both think each other's dead, but they're still trying to do the prince that was promised thing. This was what they were about, these Targaryen magic-y types. And Bloodraven thinks he has found the prince that was promised in Jon and is supporting him. And Quaithe Shira Seastar thinks she's found it in Dany. And so they've got these old lovers, they've got their own champions. They think they found it. And at some point, those two are going to come together. And it's like, we've been pushing different people all this time. So yeah, that's just an extra layer there. Whether or not, I mean, maybe Bloodraven won't even survive that long. Who knows? But you also, yes, you're asking about House Dane. How might House Dane be connected to the prophecy? Um, well, uh, we don't know. George R. R. Martin has deliberately kept a lot with House Dane away from us, so we don't sort of lore, history, things like that. So we just have the outline. But it's the most obvious thing. It kind of like stabs you around the face that every time you think about it. The language usage around House Dane and their sword absolutely 100% fits what we're talking about here. So the sword is called Dawn. If you how do you end the long night? Dawn. And the person who wields it, Sword of the Morning, ending the long night. Um, so is this uh, connected in some way? Well, this is incredibly old. And it is not Valyrian steel, it is slightly different. It is made from apparently a fallen meteorite, which is, could this be, again be like a red comet blazing across the sky? They followed it, they forged from it a sword. The imagery there again, red comet, swords being forged. If there is one sword out there that could be the original Lightbringer, it has to be Dawn. That's my general take on this. And it probably will come into the story at some point. So it wouldn't surprise me if so Darkstar might well steal it, claim it for his own. He will probably make his way over to. I went through all of this some other time, so I won't go into all of the justifications for it. But it seems to make sense for him to go and join up with young Griff, Vagon, as the king, join the Kingsguard if he can, and then he's got that sword, and that sword then has come into play. It wouldn't surprise me if it ends up with John, incidentally. So how are they involved? They're one of the oldest and most ancient families, with house words that would probably be too spoilery if George R. R. Martin told us what they are. They're clearly very involved with Rhaegar. Arthur Dane was his best friend. Ashara Dane was there hanging around the scene as well. Very closely associated with Rhaegar, who was obsessed with the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai. It all points to yes, they're important. If I had to guess, then Dawn is the original Lightbringer, and they have been holding on to it for waiting for the next long night, and that's why they were getting closer with Rhaegar, who thought that the next long night was coming very soon. And just as a complete aside, there, Rhaegar almost certainly thought the next long night was happening then, literally then, when he ran off with Lyanna. He thought that was the new long night happening. You had a winter, and then you got spring, and then suddenly winter came back. A winter that should not. We think of this as the year of full spring, looking back. But at the time, they weren't thinking this was a full spring. They will probably been thinking this is another winter. Why is that? Why is there a winter? And this was a harsh winter suddenly hit. We're told that it got so cold all the way down as far as King's Landing that the Blackwater Rush froze over. Massive river froze over. Rhaegar, who was obsessed with prophecy, will have been looking out for when is there an unexpected and really bad winter. It's just come. And that almost certainly will have been the thing which suddenly spurred him into this super fast action. Got to get with Lyanna now, got to go off and do things now. That was probably what was driving him there. And if he was with Arthur Dane, who had the sword Dawn, then it's like we're keeping this close by all the way through this. This is something that will be needed in this winter, because this is something which can be used. It's not just a symbol. He's not just my mate. This is a guy who is holding one of the most precious artifacts in the entire world. Right, so let's go to... I think those are the questions I've had about Azor Ahai, Prince that was promised from my patrons. If you've got more questions on that, drop them into the chat now. That's a good time. I've got a couple more questions from my patrons, though, which I will pick up. Relaxed Like a Cat saying, "Hi, Robert. I hope you're enjoying the good weather." I am, actually, yeah, although it was raining this evening, which confused me a lot because it's been very warm and sunny here in England. And then suddenly I looked outside, it's raining. I should not be confused by rain in England, but sometimes I am. I have a general Song of Ice and Fire question for you. Recently, I saw a meme about Tyrek Lannister. I've never heard of him. Is he a character of intrigue, and will you do a video on him in the future? Is he a character of intrigue? There is a mystery surrounding him. I don't know what the meme was that you saw. I'd be intrigued. But there is a mystery surrounding him. He is the son of Tyget, I think that's how you pronounce it, Lannister, who is the brother of Tywin and Kevin and that lot. And so he is cousin to Cersei, Jaime, Tyrion. And he's... at the beginning of the story, he is one of the what's not the word? Attendants to King Robert. You put the word in the chat, and I'll be how do I've forgotten a word? I always forget the word. But anyway, so he with Lancel Lannister, the two of them were squires. That's the word I'm looking for. He was a squire to King Robert. As the story evolves, when the Lannisters have to be trying to stake their claim across the Riverlands, he then gets engaged to somebody in order to get their land, or is made to get engaged to somebody who turns out is still a baby, and everyone just laughs at him a lot, is that he then has to get married to a child. But that's just background, because the mystery comes when we get the riot. I mentioned it in passing earlier in the stream. There's a riot in A Clash of Kings when Myrcella is sent off to Dawn. She goes off to Dawn, and the court head out into King's Landing just to wish her bon voyage, safe trip. They all head off, and as they're coming back, the people of King's Landing riot. The cause of this riot, the underlying cause of this riot, is the fact that there's a lack of food in King's Landing. Basically, Stannis and Renly have sort of put blockades around. It's very hard getting food in. Food comes from more than anywhere else down in the Reach, and the Tyrells are, at this stage, they are very much allied with Renly, so there's not much food. And then the rich and well-fed people from the Red Keep wander out and in and around the streets of King's Landing, and there's a riot, and it gets nasty. Lots of bad stuff happens in that riot, and people go missing. And the person who goes missing that is probably most notable is this young Tyrek Lannister. Now, that in and of itself is probably not a mystery. People do, and Tyrion thinks about it and thinks, well, yeah, probably. I mean, they would if he gets hit and dies, and then people will rob any kind of rings or fancy stuff off of him, but then they won't want to. They'll know that the Lannisters will come out looking for him. They'll have to dispose of the body. That in and of itself, it's not that big a mystery. But and he and Tywin both sort of send teams out trying to find it. nothing. Which is a little curious, but not uncertain. Jamie, however, who, and I think it's in A Feast for Crows, he just rather absent-mindedly starts wondering about this, and he comes to the conclusion that maybe Varys actually had something to do with this. And his thinking was that Varys, he knows what's going on. He will have known that there was a potential riot brewing, and he didn't tell anyone. So that's strange to start with. It's also strange that he didn't join the court who headed down to the docks. He stayed up in the Red Keep. Again, a little bit curious. Then this happened, and Tariq disappeared. And Jamie's thinking was that Tariq would have known stuff because he would have known, probably because he was with Lancel, he would have known about the circumstances of the death of Robert Baratheon. And maybe Varys just disappeared him, which adds to this. People have kind of extrapolated out from this and said, well, what plans could he have? Well, perhaps Varys has decided that he will want to have a Lannister on his side. And so he's got Tariq out, and he's going to unveil him at some point and say, this Lannister here is the Lannister we're all going to recognize as being the new head Lannister, and he can go off and he can be our person in Casterly Rock. Is it possible? Yes. We've not really been given much by way of a clear steer one way or another. We should take Jamie seriously with his thinking. He's not stupid. He's actually quite insightful at times, Jamie. So him thinking that maybe Varys had something to do with it, we should keep it at the back of our heads. And Spark saying, not a question about Azor Ahai, though in A Song of Ice and Fire question. Do you think George R. R. Martin's North or Beyond the Wall regions were somewhat inspired by or influenced by J.R.R. Tolkien's The Helcaraxa? So for those who don't know what The Helcaraxa is, if you have... it's the frozen North, but it's... as much as anything else, it's a kind of a frozen land bridge that most joined up Aman, which was where the Valar were, and Middle Earth. And so when the elves, back before the First Age, the Noldor elves headed over. Some went across in boats, but most didn't for good reason. And the rest, though, went across the north. Basically, they went up to the Middle-earth, other equivalent of the Arctic Circle, across the Helcaraxa, and then down into Middle-earth. And it was terrible. It was a horrible journey. It was very, very cold, and it was not pleasant at all. Has that influenced in some way George R. R. Martin's Frozen North? I don't think in a specific way, but I do think that this idea that we have different continents that might be connected by the ice. I think George R. R. Martin has played with that a bit, with this idea that perhaps the others also came down, as other legends have it, written in other ways, into the far side of Essos. So maybe it's not just they're up somewhere beyond the wall. Maybe they're just in the equivalent of the Arctic Circle. So I don't think there's a specific influence there. But yes, clearly they're both very cold places, and the land bridge thing does kind of work. But people in the chat saying last seen a horse. So yeah, Tyrek Lannister. I mean, this was a joke which I'm not 100% sure where it came from. possibly Alt Shift X. I'm not 100% sure. It was the phrase which John Martin has used about Tyrek is he was last seen a horse, which you can misinterpret. He became a horse. That may well be the meme that you've got. Pass Ballerina. Could the prophecy be about dragons? Killing Nisa cracked the moon, and the Dothraki believe dragons came from a broken moon. And the last hero used dragon steel. Yeah, I mean, I get this. There is in one of those Nisa stories that I read out just a moment ago. Then, it is said that her cry of anguish, and ecstasy left a crack across the face of the moon. So that's the legend. There is the Dothraki have a legend that dragons came from a broken moon. So could we be saying that actually the creation of Lightbringer is connected with the coming of the dragons? And there was obviously dragon steel, which seems to be what Azor Ahai was using. Is this all just code for dragons, really? Dragons are the things. Dragons are Lightbringer. Dragons are the things which can destroy the others. Yeah, I don't think we can discount it. I mean, it seems like quite a long stretch to me. If we're trying not to take things literally in these stories, then I think us saying, and this put a crack in the moon, across the face of the moon, I don't think we necessarily should take that literally as it actually put a crack in the moon, and I don't think we should literally take the dragons came from the moon thing. So it doesn't. Maybe it is, but I don't think that's the Occam's razor answer here, if that makes sense. I think dragons definitely play a part here, but I don't think that all of this is George R. R. Martin writing in code for us that the answer is dragons, and dragons will kill the others. And Chaos Ballerina, why is no one in universe looking for Lightbringer or trying to forge a new one? Isn't it necessary to beat the others? Can just any sword become it if you kill a woman? Is it too late for Dawn to end up with Jon? Right, well, why is no one looking for Lightbringer? Melisandre created Lightbringer. She's clearly decided that that's what she's doing. Bloodraven clearly thinks that it's important because in the dream that he seems to have given Jon, he is holding a burning sword. So it wouldn't surprise me if he has been looking for it. The fact that we don't know of anyone who is specifically looking for it does not, in my mind, mean that people are not looking for it. Is it necessary to beat the others? My working theory, it's the dragon glass that is necessary, and fire also does it. And if you've got dragon glass and fire on a sword all at the same time, that's pretty amazing. Can any sword become it if you kill a woman? I don't think that's the implication of the story. It seemed to be the feel of that story, the Nisa story, was that he had a heavy heart because he realized the only thing would have to be the woman he loved, not just a random woman. So, yeah, it's not just you kill a woman, you get a magic sword. That doesn't seem to be the case elsewhere in George R. Martin's world. Is it too late for Dawn to end up with Jon? No, I don't think it's too late for Dawn to end up with Jon, but I think Jon would only get it towards the very end of the story. So it can happen. I think it's at the moment it seems to be at Starfall, but I could certainly see Dark Star might take it. claim it for himself. Darkstar has to go somewhere. The Martells are after him. Doran Martell's after him. He has to go somewhere where he's got some safety from Doran Martell, and going to the new king would provide him with that safety, particularly if he manages to get himself onto the Kingsguard, because then Doran wouldn't be able to kill him or get other people to kill him. So that is how it could end up in King's Landing, and they're in defense of Vagon. And then you just have to get John down south from where he is up north. He's obviously up in the north for the time being. First of all, he's got to come back from the dead. Then he's got to deal with the Winterfell issue. And then, I mean, on the show, he headed down south because he was looking for Dragonglass. I mean, it's entirely possible that that might be a reason, but also you could imagine that Fagon, young Griff, might, on hearing all of these prophecies, decide that he was going to go north with Darkstar. So either way, I could see it happening, but it doesn't. It's certainly not in the first half of the Winds of Winter. Probably not in the second half of the Winds of Winter. We're not. It's not until A Dream of Spring, I would have thought, that John would get his hands on Lightbringer, if he does, and if he does, it's something along those lines. Jewel Elson, super sticker, thank you very much. I hugely appreciate that. Dynamite, the sword ice equals Lightbringer. Tempered in water equals ice. Lion is a Lannister. Nisa question mark. Swords clashing often refers to a song of ice and on fire. Yeah, I mean, I can. So the argument is for either sword ice. I think does come from the fact that this is clearly the Stark ancestral sword. The Starks are clearly very involved in this and were from the very beginning. The sword ice that we have in the story is not the same sword that they had in the past. That's very clear. This was a Valyrian steel sword that they got from Valyria, and it replaced a previous sword that they had, and there was probably a previous sword to that as well. So I don't think that's right. I do quite like this idea, maybe, that you could say the original sword ice actually is Dawn, because that is milk glass. It is more. It looks more like an ice color than the dark rippling sword that was ice, the Valyrian steel sword. Tempered in water, yeah. So this is how you create it. Is ice. A lion is a Lannister. It's now being used by Lannister. Is there with the Lannisters. So yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, my instinct on these things is I don't think George R. R. Martin writes in that kind of like analogy type. This actually means that actually means that therefore means this. I don't think he's creating that kind of a jigsaw for us. I think he's writing a story that we will get things revealed as they go through, rather than if only we understand the right code, we can decrypt what he's trying to say. If that makes sense. Right, have we got anything else in the chat? Desert Storm born Charlie 1-1. So Ned is the only real connection we have of the Starks and Danes over this period. Lyanna, of course, as well. She was there with Arthur Dane in the Tower of Joy for a long period of time. But yeah, Ned's the main link. Cheryl Baxter saying, I also thought John may get Dark Sister through Bran. Yeah, I mean, I get that. So Dark Sister, I think, did a video on that if you're interested. Dark Sister, I we know that Bloodraven brought it to the wall. Almost certainly he took it north of the wall with him. Almost certainly it's in the cave with Bran. It makes sense that that comes back with Bran. I don't know whether Bran would then give it to Jon. Jon's already got a sword. He's got a Valyrian steel sword. So why would you give him a different one unless you're wanting to say, but this is your family sword because you're actually a Targaryen? So maybe, but I. The risk with Jon is to give him too many different swords. You also have people who say, as we've said, we were looking at maybe he gets Dawn. I've heard people suggest that maybe he'll end up getting uh, Blackfire, or maybe one of the halves of Ice, the sword that was Ice. So there are lots of these different ideas. He's got a Valyrian steel sword. I think he'll probably keep that until he gets a new sword, because for some particularly important and symbolic reason. Maybe that's Dark Sister, maybe that's Dawn. Through RuneScape Frogmask, do you think there's anything about Dawn and the personalities of Jon and Dany? Dany seems to relish in the idea of being special, whereas Jon is more a call to duty. Isn't the wielder chosen by Dane? Yeah, so Dawn, the sword Dawn, and the person who wields the sword Dawn is called the Sword of the Morning. That doesn't just go to the next heir, as it does in almost all other families with Valyrian steel swords. It just goes to the heir, gets it each time. Sometimes with Dark Sister, it was more of like we'll give this to the Targaryen who's not going to be king, but he's going to be doing a lot of fighting for us. But Dawn sometimes skips generations. If there's nobody who's deemed worthy to be wielding that sword at that time, then nobody wields that sword. We're not told, we haven't had enough information about who gets to decide whether someone is worthy. What does the worthy bit mean? Is it a good character? Is it an ability as a fighter? Is it both? So there's a lot going on there. So it's hard to say you get that because you're chosen by it. I don't think it's like a matter of it choose the sword choosing the person. But when you say Dany seems to relish in the idea of being special, she also doesn't seem to relish in the idea of having a sword. That's not really her style. I mean, wouldn't put it past her wielding a sword, but she seems a lot more focused in on the dragons than sword use. Reflective Rambling, gifting some IDG Live memberships. Thank you very much. I hugely appreciate that. And Aussie Greg saying, just finished reading George R. Martin's Fever Dream. Great read, highly recommend. Yeah, that's my favourite of the George R. Martin non-A Song of Ice and Fire books is Fever Dream. I would partly back up that that recommendation. And right, I think probably with that we'll start pulling this one to a close. But we've got a few things. First of all, moderators. Let's give the moderator. I did it at the very beginning of the stream. If you're here in the chat, could you just show the moderators some love for being fantastic again today, as they always are. Patrons, I always want to thank you as well. This is why I frame so much of this around my patrons' questions. Next week, I'll probably do a pre-record for next week. Let's see, I did ages ago, you've probably forgotten this, but ages ago I did a pre-record of some tinfoil theories, and I got about halfway through, and I had so many of them. I said, "Well, I'll do a part two." So I will do a part two. So next week I will probably do that as a pre-record. My patrons, I'm going to come to you as well about. It's time we're overdue doing a Lord of the Rings one, so I will come Lord of the Rings live stream. So I will ask you what you wanted me to be covering in Lord of the Rings in terms of live streams. Um, I did tease last week that I'm setting up another channel, which I don't know if anyone's found yet. I actually set it up. I don't think anyone will have found it yet. Oh, one person has subscribed. So there is out there. There's a secret channel. I'll tell you what it's called. There's a link down in the description if you're interested. In Deep Sleep. Which is a very silly name, but I've been struck by the fact, and lots of people have said this to me, that people often use my videos to fall asleep to. And I thought, well, why don't I just create a channel that allows that in some way? And I don't know exactly how this is all going to look in the long run. I've not uploaded any videos onto there at all, but I'm going to take these live streams, and I'm just going to have the audio track and then like some kind of cozy image of like a roaring fire or something, and then my voice will kind of trail off, and then it can like run for 8 hours or whatever it is, so you can all get some sleep. And I thought I'll do that over there, and I'll just see if people want it. So it might be a silly idea, it might be a genius idea. Lots of people have suggested this to me. Thank you to all of those people who have. But yeah, if you think that might be a thing, we'll do, and I'll make sure there's no adverts in the video itself, so you're not going to get interrupted by any adverts there. So yeah, go and subscribe. There's a link down in the description somewhere. Cheryl Baxter, thank you very much for the super sticker. I hugely appreciate that. And just having a quick in Deep Sleep, people liking the idea. And Andrew's saying mixing some bedtime stories. Yeah, I might do that. I might do some things from over on the Well Told Tale as well. This is so I read stories over there. So maybe I'll do a few of them, add them in. I just see what people like is the idea. I've not got a completely fixed view on what this is. It's just one of those things that people have sort of said so many times that I just thought, well, let's see what happens. Might try having some of them where my face is still down in like a little corner here or something like that. Sometimes we'll just have a nice image on there. Let's see what happens. We'll give it a go. All right. And let's have a quick flick through the chat. And In Deep Sleeper now has 12 subscribers. Well, I'm excited about that. There's literally nothing on the channel yet, but if you do subscribe, I would appreciate that. As a read old man stories, people are saying, yeah, I could do that as well. Just yeah. We'll see what happens. Anyway, with all of that, by the way, if you've got this, if you're watching this back a little bit later, yeah, do go and check out. I will in Deep Sleep. There might be, I don't know. I'll put the first one up there at some point this week. So do go and check back on that, and then I'll remind you again this week. So. If you're watching this back a little bit later, appearing somewhere around here is a link to other live streams that I have done. If you'd like to watch them, appearing somewhere around here will be a link to my Patreon page. And maybe I'll put somewhere in the middle here a link to In Deep Sleep. Let's see whether I can figure that one out. All right. Take care, everyone. We'll be back next week with some tinfoil theories. It will be pre-recorded, but I will try and show up in the chat. Take care, everyone. I will see you soon.